The NFL finally acknowledged cannabis as a possible pain management opioid alternative, donating nearly $2 million to private studies aimed at finding how cannabis can alleviate concussions and pain. Despite Taylor Swift's boyfriend's dry snitching on 50 to 80% of his estimated NFL brethren actively partaking, Luke Scarmazzo, how do you feel about that? Uh, the league has slowly relaxed its stance on cannabis. Players can now face reduced penalties for popping positive after rules were amended back in 2021, allowing players to undergo just one weed test per year at the start of training camp. What's the point of even testing if you know when you're going to get tested? You know,
That way you can
you're
pass.
going to be fine. Exactly. So, although they didn't all out delete cannabis testing from the league's policies as they should have, it was a huge step forward for a league notoriously slow to march toward progress. Jerry Jones, the loser of the weekend, notoriously marched against Martin Luther King. Look it up. Per the article, this past summer, the NFL and its players union announced that they were joining together to fund two research grants worth over $500,000 each to fund independent studies on the therapeutic benefits of CBD as a pain treatment alternative to opioids for players with concussions. On February 2022, the NFL awarded $1 million in grants to two teams of medical researchers to study the effects of CBD on pain management and neuroprotection from concussions among elite football players. Brain injuries in football account for 65 to 95% of all fatalities, according to the Brain Injury Research Institute. Football injuries associated with brain occur at a rate of 1 in every 5.5 games. Could CBD be the antidote to CTE? We shall soon see. Researchers from the University of Virginia, recipients of over 500,000 of the NFL's 2022 grant, aim to find out. We know that CBD is anti-inflammatory, Dr. Patrick Neary, who is leading the University of Virginia study, said, according to CBC News. So it can help to reduce inflammation while still allowing the brain to recover from those good chemicals that are coming in. Now, personally, I'm inclined to say THC would be a better candidate for acute brain injuries and anti-inflammatory purposes or trauma rather than CBD, but I'm no doctor. I'm just Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street for High at 9 News, and I want to hear y'all's thoughts on this one. Is $500,000 going to CBD brain injury research a good use of money or no? What do y'all think?
Just $500,000? That's it?
Not even a drop in the bucket, dude. Not even a drop in the bucket.
That's tiddlywinks.
NFL makes
NFL money.
so many billions of dollars a year, and they know this is killing people, and they just put $2 million here.
You know,
figure it out, guys. CBD.
You know, I actually had this conversation during the Cowboys game with a bunch of fans yesterday, and I think that the NFL, I think the NFL, in regards to its policies, since they have this head injury situation going on, that I think that they should institute the skunk rule. You know, like when we used to play Tecmo Bowl and Madden, you know, if you all of a sudden you were down by 21, game over, boom, boom, boom. I think the NFL
controller.
Yep, I think the insurance industry would get behind it. I think the NFL Players Union would get behind it. The only people I think that wouldn't get behind it is the advertisers.
Dude, I was just delighted to see last year. I didn't see any of those opioid commercials. Just 5 years ago, watching the NFL, watching the Super Bowl, you'd see like 2 out of 5 commercials were for some of these opioids, with all of these, with like a 30-second long reading of the disclaimers of what harm that these things will do to you. And remember when Lowell Smokes tried to do a commercial, and they panned that shit?
I do remember that.
They wouldn't even put real medicine out there, but you have the number 1 and 2 advertisers on there, which is Big Pharma and Big Alcohol with Budweiser, like all this shit. And you know people are getting hopped up on drugs and people are getting drunk as hell going to and from Super Bowl parties, but you don't even allow cannabis to be marketed, even though it was legal. So, I mean, I think this is a step in the right direction, but they need to stop masking it behind CBD, in my opinion. Just like get real about it and be like, yo, like we are testing all cannabinoids. Don't just like try to be tiptoe.
Rico, would you still feel the same way if that was the CBD is the Trojan horse for the rest of it? Like, because understand, like the general concept of America, like your American that watches football, like your regular working class American, CBD is okay now. CBD is not a big deal. CBD, we can get it everywhere. CBD's like accepted, right? So now we can kind of like say, okay, hey, we're going to do these studies on CBD. I agree with both of you guys on the funding, though. I mean, can you even hire staff for $500,000? Like, that's one person, right? In like a lab, I feel like, especially at this level where you're testing whether or not. Go ahead.
Yeah. I feel like we were at that CBD as like the entry point. Like, I feel like we were at that point maybe like 7 years ago.
Yeah,
like,
no,
Like
definitely.
now,
sure.
I think like now we're past that, and we have so many states that have legalized since then, and where the real power of this plant lies. Like CBD was a great initial pop back in like 2017, 2018 when it was all the rage, but like now people know that, come on, bro, it's THC. That's where the medicine is. And that's what's really
it's everything. It's everything. It's right. It's not just THC. It's not just CBD. That's the problem that the problem we are all arriving at is that we isolate these compounds and then we say, oh, they're not as effective. Well, that's because you've isolated the plant, and the plant isn't in nature. Like, the plant doesn't arrive like that as a medicine. And we're tweaking with it and messing with it. And sometimes we can make advancements like that, but we got to be careful because it's a slippery slope, right? Then you get somebody who says, oh, only THC or only CBD. And then I feel like we are missing some of the benefits when we.
Agreed.
I mean, look, 500,000 is a step in the right direction. But to your point, Rico, given the scale of the NFL and the associated budgets, it's more like a press release grade dollar amount than it is a move the needle substantially forward dollar amount. I think that they probably chose CBD only, not because the science dictates that CBD only research, it will be the most effective, but because this is the most palatable for their viewership. And so again, if we think about prioritizing viewership versus the well-being and health of the players, then we can obviously acknowledge that there's room for improvement. No group of people in the United States would probably more greatly benefit from cannabis as medicine than young men who go racing down a field and hurling their body into unknown spaces, typically colliding with other players. So I hope that this is a step in the right direction. What I would have preferred would be an announcement that indicated this type of dollar per year for X number of years, or that this was the dollar amount for year one with escalating dollar amounts over years 2, 3, 4, and 5. But I'm not mad at it.
I'm mad at it. They should have been putting like $4.2 million just to start off with something like this. They're trying to take it seriously. $500,000 isn't anything. It's basically it sets up the framework to study. It doesn't even.
Roger Goodell made like $50 million.
Exactly.
Yeah, Roger Goodell, the commissioner, made $50 million last year.
Mm-hmm.
So
this is
you put in like $2 million. Yeah, that multi-billion.
So this is like 1% of his paycheck. Like
this is nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
after denying the fact that CTE and these brain injuries were actually killing folks for nearly 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
This is like for real. Like after denying for nearly 30 years and giving this paltry ass payment to help these guys that are like literally dying in their 50s from brain injuries from the NFL. You're like, oh, well, and pumping all of these opioids on their players for decades. You put $2 million into, maybe cannabis will work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just feeling peaceful because today is Martin Luther King Day. Otherwise, I would be a lot more ranty. And then last week when I went on my tirade, the internet crashed. So I'm trying to be a gentler version of myself, especially on Bagel Day, right? Like Bagel Day really matters to me as well.
Don't believe the media hype. Martin Luther King was a fucking radical, man. He was a radical, and he was a problem to the status quo. So like all this bullshit, like, oh yeah, well, like he was marching, like yeah, he was marching because he didn't want to go like fist to fist, like gun to gun, like Malcolm X's path forward. But he was 100% public enemy number one. They hated the shit out of him because of him speaking out on shit like this, straight up.
And on that, we're gonna go to a commercial, and we're gonna be right back.